hop in the frame. I'm gonna say, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Fight for Your Right Fishing. We are back in the shop. We actually have you on a GoPro this time instead of my phone, so I can actually link products and stuff, which is kind of why I did that. But we're gonna take a little detour from the bass fishing world that we've been in, because lately I've been diving back into steelhead and salmon. You know, steelhead, basically rainbow trout, brown trout, king salmon, cohos, Atlantics, that kind of deal. That's what we've been doing a lot of lately, so that's what I wanted to get into, because a lot of people have been asking me questions about that, because it is that time of year, it is a popular topic. So I'm going to dive right into it. I'm going to talk today about my setups, whether it's my Centerpin setup, my spin fishing setup. I won't do my fly fishing setup today. I'll do that in another video, because that's kind of a whole different ordeal. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the bait selections that I like to use, because that's basically the meat and potatoes of what I do.
Right here.
Oh God! Slide him! This is Fight for Your Right Fishing. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is what I like to use as far as baits, because I feel like that's something that a lot of people are going to want to know, and that's where a lot of people struggle, because the gear part of it, you can get away with using a lot of different pieces of equipment, the rods, the reels, but it all comes down to the same colors, the same sizes, the same hooks, that kind of thing. So let's just dive right into it. This is my pack. This is an old, I don't even remember the name of it, William Joseph Confluence pack. I've had this thing ever since my competitive fly fishing days, and I like it because it's got magnetic pockets on it, so it makes everything real easy. So I got all my floats in here, then I keep my working boxes in here, like some of my fly selections, and then my jig selections, some beads in here, my hooks, and then I keep the meat of everything back here, whether it's my AP rigs, or all my different weights and all my different bead selections. So right off the bat, got a light, because sometimes, pretty much every time I go up to Western New York, I'm getting there super early because a lot of it gets spot specific. I want to talk a little bit about the line I use. I love the Seagar Salmon and Steelhead tippet. I'm a really big fan of it. It's super strong. I use everywhere from 4 to 12, and I know you're saying 12 is ridiculous. Well, when you're on the Niagara River catching lake trout, you don't want to be using 4 or 6 pound line, because you might hook a 30 pounder, and in the current up there, it's going to destroy you. So in here, I keep 4, 6, and 12, or 4, 6, 8, and 12, because the difference between 8 and 10 really isn't that big of a difference for me. If I'm going to use 10, I might as well just use 12 at that point. I'm not really concerned with the diameter of it. Then I have my mega bead box. Mega to me, probably not mega to a lot of people. And then I keep back here, I just keep, extra 15-gram floats, because that's a lot of what I run. I gotta actually get one of those out, because I broke one off the other day. I'll leave it in there for now, though. I keep a lot of my bigger slip floats back here, and then I just keep like weights, zip ties, that kind of thing. This is like just my extra storage. I got some mega shot in case I'm really fishing down deep. And then yeah, just a whole smattering of different things back here. So I'm gonna spin that baby around. So let's talk a little bit about my bead selection first. Let's get you off the stand there, and I can do like a little overview of it and set you back down. Pop you off right there. As you can see, I have like a 10 mil or 12 mil pink. I think this is 12 mil. Yeah, that's 12 mil pink chartreuse, orange, and then like a roe color. I have some blue, and then I have my natural colors as far as like my clear chartreuse, still clear chartreuse, clear orange, different clear chartreuse in a 10 mil, some whites, and then some light pink, which is one of my favorite colors right there. And then I drop the sizes a little bit. You can see I just take my main colors, drop sizes, and get a little bit more natural. Some of my favorite beads are these little orange and kind of transparent beads in like a 10 or an 8 mil. Those are some of my favorite ones, that size specifically. This has been a really hot color for me lately, this 8 mil chartreuse. You can see they're kind of mixed up, but those are really the main ones that I run with. Let's see if I can just stack you up on the line here. Hopefully that works pretty good. Hopefully you can see me all right there. That'll keep you kind of close for the remainder of the video, in this part of it anyway. But I really like to keep my colors pretty simple. I have 4 basic colors. I have my pink, chartreuse, my orange, and then my oddball color like blue. But then I just vary it off of there, because let's face it, if they don't eat one of those different variances, then they're probably not going to eat. I have my clear chartreuse, which is I use for a little bit higher sky conditions. When it's really sunny out, really clear, that's when I'm going to go to that more natural color. When it's overcast and cloudy and rainy out, that's when you can get away with more of this really, really bright chartreuse, or if the water's a little off color, and that's kind of the basic for my colors. I'm just fishing what the conditions are calling for, really, and that's something I related from bass fishing over to my salmon and my steelhead. And that's something that I put together with that. When you got those low, clear conditions with high sun, a lot of pressure, I'm going to go to those real natural, those real finessey colors like this one right here, if I can get a hold of one of them. This 10 mil light pink fuchsia, that color's killer. I'm even going to get it in an 8 mil because it's such an awesome color. But that's when I'm going to go to that more natural color. As far as the brighter beads, those, I typically like to run those in tandem with a really light color, like a more natural color, because right off the bat in the morning you'll get them on those real bright colors when they're real aggressive, but then as the day progresses, a lot of times you got to downsize or you have to go more natural, because you'll get more pressure, more people on the water, and those fish are just getting more positioned into their holding water. In the evenings and night, early morning, they're moving a lot. That's what those fish are going in those streams for. They're trying to move up to spawn. They're a lot more active. But as that day kind of progresses and gets to that midday, they're holding in their holes. They're going to be in that holding water. They're going to be in those places where people aren't bugging them. And that's going to depend on the rivers you're fishing. If you're on the Niagara River, those fish are going to be moving a little bit all day just because they can get away with it. They'll just slide out deeper. But if you're on some smaller creeks like Elk Creek in PA, like I fish a lot, or even Crooked Creek or Sandy Creek up in New York, those streams are really shallow. Those fish are going to be in their holes for the day for the most part, unless you get those higher water conditions. So that's pretty much my bead selections, though. That's what I'm going to stay with. Those are my staples. I'm going to try to keep it super simple so that way I don't wig myself out. I'm not going through a million different colors throughout the day. I'm just, going off my basics. And like I said, I'll run one really bright one and one really dull one. And sooner or later, you'll kind of get a pattern which one they're eating, and then you can just kind of stick with that. Sorry about that. The table rocks a little bit. Next, I have my jigs. As you can see, there's a bunch of them in there. I have a bunch of different sizes. I go all the way from like an 1/8 ounce all the way down. I think that's even a 3/16 really. Yeah, that's a 3/16 tungsten. All the way down to like a 32nd of an ounce right here. And that's, again, going to depend on the depth of the water clarity. That's what I have these different jigs for. But if you can tell, it's whites, and then it's like a chartreuse, or not like a chartreuse, but like a... Ooh, hold on a second. Heater's kicking back on. I'm going to have to unplug that baby. There it goes. I have like emerald shiner colors, which look like a basic bait fish, and then I have my whites, and then a little bit of, olive and black. But for the most part, I'm sticking with white, and then something real bright and shiny like that. So that way it just triggers them. That's really what it's going for. Let me give you a close-up look at that. You can see I got a lot of white, and then I get into some blacks, some emeralds, some shiny colors. Like this is my most productive one. Where is it? This is a bigger version of it. This color right here is probably my favorite one. I get a ton of fish on that in clear and then a little bit off color water. But those are my jig selections. You can see I got some purple ones and stuff in there for if I get into some salmon, you know, trying to mix up the colors because sometimes they get a little weird with color. But it's all about the weight. That's really what it comes down to, is getting that perfect weight dialed in for the water that you're fishing. And I typically like to run a lot of those with like a 6-gram float. And I'll get into that here in a second. But yeah, 6.2 gram right there, or like a 3.7. Something that just matches the weight of that jig perfect. And what I'll do a lot of times is I'll just get above the hole, so that way I can position that jig in those fish's faces. I'll get above the hole and just cast it down into the hole, and I'll either start at the top and shake it the whole way down, or I'll cast it to the bottom and bring it up. So that way it's coming past them, so that way it gives them a chance to eat it. And if I can see them really, really well, then I'll just position myself to where I can keep that jig right in their face, and I'll just sit there and hop it. And eventually you'll get one to come up and snap on it. And those can be some really, really fun bites. And when you hook one of those on a jig, they're your pet. You're landing them. And one oddball bait that I like to throw in there that not a lot of people throw is these Berkeley Power Worms. I think I have one like right here. I did anyway. Berkeley Power Worms. This is a low-key awesome bait. All it is just like a bright pink one is what I really like. This is like a pink shad color, I think is what it's called. Yeah, pink shad. I like a bubblegum color personally, but they were all sold out of bubblegum. So I guess a lot of people do fish them. But what I really like those for is low clear water. Those low light periods, when it just makes them react is what it truly comes down to. I can go, and if I fish a hole for a while and it's low and clear and they're not eating anything, I can put one of those babies on and you'll get 1 or 2 random fish out of the hole that'll just come up and absolutely obliterate it. You can see that jig's falling apart. But it just triggers me a couple more bites than I normally would get fishing, you know, beads or jigs or something like that. For whatever reason, they come out of the woodwork and just hammer that thing. Other than that, I don't really catch a lot of fish on it. That's like the only times that I'll really hammer them on it is if I'm fishing that clearer water conditions and there's a pot of fish. Then I can actually really get a few of them on it. Other than that, I don't really throw it. I don't know why, but it just pisses them off, I guess. I do have one other bait that I like to throw. That is Berkeley Power Minnow. This is like a clear emerald color. And what I really like it for is I'll put it on a jig head too. But what I really like it for is low clear water. I basically just hook it like you see here. And I'll just drift it down through there because there's honestly a ton of emeralds and bait fish that live in those creeks. And not a lot of people throw like a plastic minnow and just let it drift. And I've had some really good days on that because this thing's actually heavy. And the fact that it's all plastics, you can cast it a long ways without having to put a lot of weight on it. And it'll just roll along the bottom and those fish will come over and hammer it. And that leads to the hook that I'm throwing. This is an Owner SSW in a number, I think this is a number 8. And it's a cutting edge hook. And you can see it has that downturned eye, which gives you more open hook, which gives you better hookup ratio. And I'll either, you know, I can't remember the name of the knot right now, but typically I tie a regular clinch knot on there. And, I'll snell it. I'll either snell it or I'll just, you know, see it, rig it as you see here. Snelling it, all I'm going to do is I can do it really quick. If I'm going to snell it, all that is I run it through the eye, bring it down, make a loop with my finger right there, and then wrap it back up over top of the line laying on the shank of the hook like 5 or 6 times. Then I'll thread it through the eye of the hook and then push it through that loop at the base right there. And you can see what that does is that line just lays along that hook, so that way I can tie something below it too, and that hook just stays perfectly in line. But typically I like to just do what you see right here. When I run a two or like a tandem rig, I'll just tie a clinch knot to the top, and they're both improved clinch knots. Tie an improved clinch knot to the top, to the bottom, then I'll run a bead and then another bead or something along that line. You can see I was running some pretty heavy stuff right there. I gotta take all that off anyway. But that is basically my hook and line setups. I run 2 hooks. I run a number 8 and then I run a number like 14. And those are the 2 I run. I really like that Owner SSW. I have a lot of luck with it. I don't lose a lot of fish with it. It all just depends on the rod and reel at that point. The hook gets good penetration. It holds really, really well. I've caught some giant Lakers, caught some really big king salmon, big brown trout. I just caught like a 30.5-inch brown that weighed 12 pounds 2 days ago on that specific hook. So, it holds them. But that's my bait selections in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions on that, I'll have the hooks, the tackle, everything linked down below, so you guys can click on all that. It'll all be linked through Fish USA, which is my main sponsor. It's America's Tackle Shop. They have a lot of great deals going on all the time as far as like bead selections, hook selections, and all their salmon and steelhead gear this time of year. But now I want to link or get into some of my gear, like my rods and reels. And I'm going to talk about my main one first, which is, let me see if I can hold this up here. This is my Centerpin Setup. So this is a Kingpin Kinetic. I'm not going to get out of the case because it's kind of cold. This is a Kingpin Kinetic. It's a relatively cheap Centerpin reel. They run at like $290, but in my opinion, they are bulletproof. I've run this one for 2 years now, and I've had zero complaints with it. I've caught everything from lake trout on it to king salmon to big brown trout, steelhead. It handles the woodwork. I pair that with a Shimano Claris. This is a 13-foot, I think it's medium light. Let me see. Yep, medium light moderate action rod, and it's honestly an amazing rod for steelhead, light lake trout, king salmon if you can hook them in a confined area, and brown trout and whatnot. It has a ton of bend in it, so you really get the cushion of that lighter line. I can throw 4 pound on this rod, no problem. And a lot of times you can't do that on a lot of rods because when you set the hook, you break them off. But if I can remember to, set the hook like a normal human being instead of Bill dancing them like I'm bass fishing, then I have no problems with it whatsoever. This is a great setup. I'm honestly going to buy another one because this is my favorite setup as far as rod and reel go. I can get a really super long drift with this reel, and then the rod being 13 foot allows me to control it, pick that line up off the water, and get better drifts across the creek than I normally would. And I want to talk a little bit about the floats that I run for these, because a lot of people get confused on the floats. Because if I open this up right here and give you a peek in here, you can see there's just a ton of different floats laying in there. And that can be pretty confusing, right? Because there's a ton of different floats. What's the difference in them? This is an 8 gram, this is a 6, I have 15s, I have 20s. You can see the difference right here is an 11. They get pretty big. Here's a 15. And I'm going to run all the way down to some of these little guys, these little baby floats. But probably one of my favorite floats is a 2.2. That does really good in like that 4 feet of water with that slower gradient current. Oh, that sucker keeps kicking on. Oh, I think I had it. There we go. But the difference is the weight that you're fishing. And a lot of people, including myself as of last year up until I really got a better grasp with it, get confused as to why we run these floats with a center pin or just float fishing in general with a ton of weight. You see that weight chain going down your line. What that is you're trying to slow your drift down to match the current on the bottom. So you'll have current at the top and then current at the bottom. And what happens is the current at the bottom is constantly having friction with the bottom. And the more boulders and rocks there are, the slower the current gets on the bottom. So up top it may look like it's ripping, but on the bottom it's just naturally rolling real slow. So that's why you use all that weight to try to slow that drift down, so you're imitating the current on the bottom, so you get a more natural drift. You can present your bait to those fish better. That's all it is. And just the more weight you have to add, the bigger the float you go. So that is what a bead chain is for. And these floats have these long pegs on the bottoms, because what that helps me do is I can move my line on top of the water without really moving the float. You can see it kind of will hold it in place, and that allows it to track in one current stem a lot better than if you just had something like this. And the only time I run these is if I have to break out the spinning gear because it's really, 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 really light, like clear water. Like it's really not a lot of flows that early season when you get a couple heavy rains, there's fish there, but then you get that dry spells and there's nothing going on. That's what I use those little ones for. And that center pin I really like for certain current applications. Once you get a little bit after the beginning of the season, when those flows get more stable, that's when I really like to break it out, because I can get those really long controlled drifts and just cover a ton of water. And it's honestly just super fun to fight them on it. I run 16-pound Sunline float line on there. It's a high vis yellow, so I can see it no matter where it's at. It just gives me a better visual for it. And then off of that, I run a little section of 12-pound, 12 or 8, and then I go to either like 6 or 4 or something like that. Or if I'm on the Niagara or bigger river king fishing, I'll run like 10 or 8-pound line or 12. But I'm only going to put that about the depth that I'm fishing. I don't have a huge stretch of that. Most of it's float line, just because it gives me better control of it. It has less stretch. So that's my center pin setup. Now I want to talk a little bit about my spin fishing setup. Let's see if I can grab one here. And I have 2 different ones that I like. They're the same rod, but they're just different setups. So they're both Lamiglass X11s. Those are really bulletproof rods. They're kind of like, just like their do-all. I have one in a 12.5 foot medium heavy, and then I have one in an 11.5 medium light. And the medium light I use for a lot more jig fishing presentations, my lighter steelhead stuff. I use it as another float rod if I have somebody else going with me or a backup that I run the same kind of deal I would run on that center pin, but it's easier for somebody else to use, and it handles lighter line better. And then I have my 12.5 meat stick, and I use that when I go big fish fishing. That's when I go big fish hunting. I'm going to run big floats, big slip sinkers, big weights on that, and that rod can just really handle that. And I pair that with a Shimano, Nassi, Sedona, all the way up to a Stratic CI4 Plus, depending on your price range. But those Shimano spinning reels, everybody knows, are legendary. They hold up to their name, and those are my favorite hands down. The line I run on them, I run the same, for my big meat stick, I run the same float line that I do on my center pin. And then for the smaller one, I actually have like an 8 to 10 pound braid on there that goes to a liter of monofilament in like that 15-pound range, which I'll then taper down to my tippet section. But those are the 2 rods that I like to run, and those cover me for basically all my applications. And a lot of you are probably asking, why do I like a longer rod? Well, I like big fish, so I like big rods. But that's not the point. What it allows me to do is it gives me better control over my line. And, that might not make sense until you get out on the water. But even when I'm fishing a small stream, like Crooked Creek or Sandy Creek, or Johnson Creek, I can reach across that whole creek with that rod and get I can get a much better presentation in front of those fish. So if they're being kind of picky, I can put a jig in front of those fish's face without having to get anywhere near them. And it also makes casting and whatnot super easy. I don't have to manage line on the water. I can keep all that line off the water, and it gives me so much more leverage on those fish. When you fish in New York and PA for steelhead season, you have the chances of hooking an absolute giant, especially in New York. When you go up there, any one of your casts could be a 30-pound king, a 15-pound brown, a 15-pound steelhead, a giant coho, an Atlantic, whatever. So I like to have that little more ass to them because it allows me to control those fish. And yeah, they're not in big creeks, but there's a lot of wood and whatnot in those creeks. And if I can get a little bit more leverage to keep them out of that stuff, all the more power to me. But that is my basic salmon, steelhead, and trout setup. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any questions about anything, I'll have everything linked down below, and be sure to throw some comments down there. Let me know what you guys are thinking, if you have questions on anything. But I hope to see you guys out on the water, and if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. So thank you so much for watching, and catch you guys later.